Hello everyone, it's Jin'taan here with Captain Patrick Archer, who is a member of and FC4 Triumvirate, which is an alliance known for many things, but notably of late its deployments away from home, shooting at entities such as Darkness or Proviblock. What can you tell us about the alliance, and how do you operate so far away from reinforcements without losing your combat effectiveness?
So the way we do it generally is we leave a capital cache at home, so we don't get overrun there, and then we just move everything that we have, most of the times in multiple move ops towards wherever we're fighting. And it is true that you're not as effective as you are at home, but generally you hope it's enough, basically.
And how do you get fights in these deployments? What do you try and do? What is the context for how you FC generally?
Well, generally, for some reason, everybody, I don't know, when we show up, people are like, "Oh my God, look at the D-scan, there's like 40 supers," and it's like, well, that's not a lot at all, but then people think, I don't know, that all those 40 supers are going to be in a fight right away, and then people just freak the fuck out. We've seen it most lately in Profi, obviously, like you mentioned, where a lot of people at least started freaking out, and as well in the North versus Guardians of the Galaxy, where we literally just showed up to have some good fights, and then did a move up to carry ships around with supers and stuff, and then everybody's like, "Oh my God!" So, like, generally we don't really have to do much to get a fight, at least for the first couple weeks. Everything you hit, people will respond to. We've done like D87 in Curse as well in the past, and it's pretty easy. You just shoot a tower, and when Citadels came out, we tried that a little bit. Although I'm not a huge fan of like the void bombs and stuff, so they're not as fun to fight on as pauses. So we tend to stick to pauses, and yeah, people will respond most of the time, and like half the time it will be too much to handle because obviously we're just a small alliance. So either you like get some friends over, or like take the fight if you can. Which is an interesting challenge most of the time, because yeah, but like Eve's the game of coalitions now more so than ever, I think, and yeah, there's gonna be big blobs. So for an alliance like us, you have to sometimes blue ball not fight because you can't take every fight anymore. Which is, I guess, I don't know. A couple of years ago, it was less. I think just after the sort, no, what's it called? The jump changes. Like just after the jump changes, it was alright, a lot better.
Awesome. I'd love to pick your brains at some point about how you think that's really changed the landscape. But we're going to be focusing today on FCing. So,
yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries at all. I'm always up for getting little details like that. So, how long have you been FCing for the group, and how did you get into FCing in general? What's your story there?
Well, I don't know. I've always played Eve, like actively participated and stepped up in things, and I think I was in Tri for 4 months or something when I started to do small. No, actually, it was right away, like pretty quickly. We started to do like T1 cruiser roams, something like FRSD, another FC and Tri. Like started off and actually grew him a lot. And I piggybacked off that, and then started to do like pauses and stuff. But generally, that's pro tip: don't do boring shit if you're starting to FC. Like if you're starting to grind pauses to learn to FC, like that's a terrible way of doing it. People don't like to do that. So you need to have the name for people to join and like stick with you if you're doing a couple pauses, and it's just fucking mind-numbingly boring. So do fun stuff, do roams, do like organized fights if you have to or something. I don't know, but like don't do the boring stuff. Anyway, that's how I did. Actually, I did start like that, and then I rolled into fights more and more. It just kind of happened. I didn't get any training or something like that you see in some of the bigger coalitions. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right, and how long have you been FCing for?
Oh, sorry. Probably like 2 years. It's not too long compared to some of the other FCs.
Yeah, that's crazy. So what does keep you FCing? What's the motivation for you to continue to FC?
That one good fight that you get like a month, like the one fight where you think, "Fuck, we're never going to win this, but we're going to try," and then you go in, and it turns out completely hyper dunked the event, like your enemy. Those fights are that keep me going, and I don't know, that's the real enjoyment in Eve, to be honest. I can be smug for days if you have a really good fight like that. And there's plenty other fights as well, but the one fight where you think this is not going to go well and you turn it around completely, that's so good.
Yeah, that's a feeling all FCs know well, I think.
Yep.
So, you talked earlier about how Triumvirate kind of fights with, it tends to fight outnumbered. You tend to be fighting against large quantities of people. Do you think that affects your style of FCing at all? Are you more aggressive? Are you more defensive? Or do you tend to play with an eye to getting more information?
Well, I definitely think I'm like quite an aggressive FC, like, but only if I've kind of figured out if we can take it. Like usually we have a decent spy network, so we know what's around, and like we don't really go in like completely blind. But if we have an angle that we think we can win in, we'll go in that hard, and well, we won't just leave basically. If we go in to win basically. So I'm pretty aggressive in that regard, I guess.
Yeah, because you need to take those kind of opportunities and make something big out of them.
Yeah, like basically when someone escalates on us, and yeah, I have the like the option to cut your losses and leave, or escalate further and potentially win. I tend to pick the second option.
All right, that's awesome to hear. What would you say your biggest strength as an FC as? This could be as vague or as very specific as you want it to be.
I guess that's most of it lies in preparation. Like if you know what the enemy, like what options the enemy has of bringing to the table, and you know how to counter those with your own like doctrines, I guess, and skill. I think if you have that in your head before you start fighting, so you don't have to think about it when you are fighting, that's pretty powerful. And on top of that, in general, like I can stay pretty calm. I get excited, but normally I don't really get stressed out. But I guess that happens when you do it a lot.
All right. And conversely, what would you say your biggest weaknesses as an FC is, and also how do you mitigate it? How do you make your weaknesses not count as much on the field?
Well, I think that's a big thing that a lot of FCs like have the same issue. Sometimes you tunnel vision, and I think you just need to be careful of that. And the way we fix that in Try is generally we have like a couple people on command. I think everybody in EVE has that nowadays, where at least like one equally skilled FC is backseating and pointing out stuff that you're missing, because you're 100% going to miss stuff while you're FCing, because you have to do, like if you do anchor and broadcasting and to keep an eye on other things, you will miss stuff. So it's good to have that backup that will correct you if you fuck up.
Yeah, having a second in command really, really does help when it comes to making decisions in a fleet. Anyway, on to a more specific point. What was the last mistake you made when you were FCing?
I will never forget. It was a very distinct. Like this is not the last one. This is the one that I don't know. It was pretty.
Stuck with you.
Yeah, for sure. It was during the Innsmouth War versus Red Alliance and like their coalition, which is probably 2 years ago now, 1.5, something like that. And took a fleet out. We rushed it into a silent jammed constellation, a dead end silent jammed constellation in Innsmouth, and it was a very big fight with PL and C, XAX, and us there versus Steinwagen and Red Menace Coalition, and I believe Out of Sight was there as well. There's pretty even numbers. There's about 1,000 people, I think. And we went in. We had to gate in under a jammer, and they were set up. And we went in with the Macario fleet. At the time, we flew MDVD Max, and we just sat at like 130 and volley shit. And we came in there. I undocked my fleet, and we started gating over. And then I realized after we bridged, we gated over, and I realized I forgot to check for Lokis. And I thought I had one. Like I had one in my mind as having one in fleet, which wasn't already like that much. Turns out we had none. So we had no webs, no application whatsoever. And we must have spent, like, it was 10% tie-dye for like 3 hours, and we spent 3 hours at a ping trying to get untackled by fucking Out of Sight Auger Navy issues, who we weren't tracking at all. It was terrible. At the same time, everybody was fighting like 130 kilometers below us, like dying, and we couldn't help. And I kept asking for webs and like refit your Loki and burn over, but somehow it didn't happen. So after that, I pinged out, if you ever find me unlocking without webs again, or any sort of application mods, I'll pay you to bill, and it hasn't happened since then. So I guess that's the biggest lesson, is like I guess comes down to preparation again. Check your shit before you embark and not after.
Yeah, that's an interesting point to give to newer FCs, I suppose. Just make sure that your comps look good, make sure you're not missing any crucial parts, and don't be afraid to tell your fleet to change, to adapt to what you want.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, check the logi. Like, logi you don't bring, like, in terms of what your fleet has, but you bring enough logi to tank what the enemy fleet has. So if someone says, no, you have like fuck tons of logi, well, that's because you want to tank their fleet and not because you want to be honorable about it.
What's one tip you would give to a new FC? What's one very specific thing that you think would help a new FC learn?
Go get as many fights as you can. Fly. It doesn't matter what ships you fly. If you fly battleships or just T1 cruisers, I would honestly pick the T1 cruiser because it's very forgiving, because it's super cheap, and get as many fights as you can. That's the one thing. That's how you learn. It's hard to tell someone like you should look out for this, and he'll maybe remember, but most of the time he'll forget. Like, especially when you tell him 10 things, he'll remember 2 and he'll forget the other 8. But when he does it himself a couple times or a lot of times, he'll eventually remember 9 out of 10.
All right, so just repetition, get comfortable with FCing, and then start doing the fancy shit.
Yeah, you don't really have to learn like doctrines. I know a lot. At least a couple coalitions have like practice doctrines that are kind of toned down T1 cheap variants of their main doctrine, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't think you need to learn how to FC certain things. If you just open Python, you make a fit for every main, like every doctrine in EVE that is now a thing, make a fit for it, and figure out why some fits don't work on a certain ship and why some do. You'll learn the power, like the powerful, or you'll learn what makes a doctrine strong. You can keep that in mind, and if you know that, you can in theory also use it yourself while FCing it. So yeah, once you learn the basics, like grid awareness is probably the most important thing. Then you can pretty much FC everything. Maybe not 100%, but good enough at least.
Yeah, you say something about grid awareness there. Is there anything in particular you do to help keep a track of what's going on a grid? Because I know a lot of new FCs find that confusing.
Well, I always have like 2 alts with me. One is a Cynoscepter that I can use like if we need it, and my other one's is a Bifrost with the cloak, and I put the Bifrost at a ping. I have pretty much every bracket on in the game, so it's kind of a clusterfuck when it gets busier, but I think you need that to keep an eye on what's happening. You zoom out and have at least the Bifrost one has graphics high enough to see like flashes from Cynoing in ships and stuff like that. That's like you have a bit of a tactical overlay map from the top down, I guess, with the Bifrost, and then the other one, like my main is just doing the anchoring from the overview. I don't really look in space that much on my main. Yeah, I don't know. You have to learn it, I guess. So see what works for you.
Alright, so what doctrine are you going to be talking about today?
I think the Rattlesnake would be an interesting pick. It's, I think we were one of the first, if not the first, group to use it a lot as a doctrine back in end of 2014, start of 2015, I guess, when we started heavily using it. So that I think that's a token doctrine for Tri, since we've done a lot with it.
Okay, what's the most defining aspect of the doctrine?
I think it's a really good doctrine because you can sit on a grid. You go in, you know, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna stay until we're done. You're gonna tank everything, at least that's the plan, obviously. You're gonna kill everything that comes into range of you. It's a really powerful ship because it is incredibly tanky and has like up to 120k, very good DPS. It does over 1000 DPS, and you can use the drone assign like you do with Gilist to make it even more powerful.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you're talking there about sitting on in one point. That's obviously very, very suited to the kind of objective-based warfare that you talked about earlier. Do you think that influenced your choice of doctrine?
Yeah, 100%. Like 99% of the doctrines of Tri are designed with a clear goal in mind. Most of them are like defined to sit on a grid and fight it out on a single point objective, for instance.
Alright, so what support does this doctrine use, and why does it use that support in particular?
Well, it uses the standard shield support ships like the Lachesis, the Hugin and stuff. We have a shield Loki as well that we bring most of the time in case all the Huggins die, because they just don't tank that much, and the shield logging at least tanks a bit more, but it has the reduced web range, and then some like vigils or hyenas, but not too much else, and then an FC Tengu with the target painter, and that's like, generally that's what we drone assign to, like a couple of FCs.
Yeah, what do you use in terms of logistics? Do you prefer to use Tech 2 or Triage?
It's a mix. Generally, we leave a bit light on like just Tech 2 Logi, and like, fill it up with Triage. You're gonna lose all the Logi anyway because the ships are so tanky. They'll like the Rattlesnake will tank, but every support ship will at some point end up dying, including all of your Logi. And if you have capital, at least if you think you have enough capitals to control the grid with, you can drop as many facts as you want.
That's very interesting. So you feel like the Tech 2 logistics that you bring are just a stopgap. They're not a main part of the doctrine almost. They're sort of like a big shield for your fleet.
Yeah, generally it's what we use. Like the reason to bring them is actually to bring them while you're traveling. So if you're burning home and you get like dropped on by some dudes, you can at least rep some. But like the power of the Rattlesnake is in Triage. Like, they're near impossible to kill.
So, well, with that going on, let's talk a little bit more about the ranges of that doctrine. I know you said that they are, they're very capable at long range. But what is its max range, and would you prefer to be close range or long range if you had the choice? Like, are you going to drop on someone at 0? Are you going to drop at someone 100k away?
It kind of depends. Like you have a couple of ways of refitting. Obviously, if you're sitting on Triage, you can drop a couple of missile launchers for some more drone link augmenters. But generally, rule of thumb that I keep is stay under 100 kilometers because then your application with the bounces is still decent. If you go further over that, you'll lose that DPS. And if you do like you can get up to like 150 or something, or even more with a Warden, like a Warden Rattlesnake with a bit of a wonky fit. But at that point, you end up doing, I don't know, like 500 DPS or something, or 400 without the missiles at 140. And it's, I don't know. That's not the strength of the Rattlesnake. The Rattlesnake is like 1,000, 1,200 DPS in the face, so I tend to stick 50 kilometers, maybe a little bit less even. Would be nice, but you can go anywhere up to 100 really if they burn away. Like if you start at 30 to 50, they have 70 kilometers to burn away from you while they're still dying before they get out of range really. And obviously, if you're within 30, then if the enemy drops dreads, most of the time, the people just light a Sino on one of their mainline doctrines, so dreads end up like 30k away, which is still somewhat in nuke range. So if you have a nuke fitted, which we sometimes do, or at least bring them, you can start nuking as well.
And obviously you have a lot of DPS to put on those dreads.
Yeah, like dreads tend to die very quickly if you drop them on like 50 Rattlesnakes. That's 50,000 DPS just from subcaps, and if you then escalate with dreads or even supers, like shit dies.
So specifically, what type of fleets or even FCs does this doctrine do well against? Is there a certain type of FC that just can't beat this doctrine almost?
That's a tough one. I think the best thing is armor hacks, or like armor T3s, but people tend to call them A hacks for some reason. I think that's a really interesting one because everybody says they're overpowered, but I would love to fight A hacks generally because you use heavy drones, and we have at some point even used rapid heavy missile launchers, which make you do I think 1500 DPS, which applies actually 100% to armor hacks. So that's just a fucking meat grinder. That's pretty beautiful. But on top of that, I think one of the only doctrines that can effectively beat Rattlesnakes is Macarials once you have enough to alpha, which means you need like 50 max or something to alpha a Rattlesnake, or more if we like full armor fit, a full tank fit it. But yeah, like max, like it's max online nowadays, so that's the one doctrine that you should be afraid of if they have critical mass on Macarials, and other than that, I'll fight just about everything. There's some doctrines, or most doctrines, that will be able to pull range from you, and they can sit at 100, 120, 150, whatever. You can't hit them, but they can't kill you either. And like as long as you're sitting on the objective with triage, it doesn't matter. Then you're winning by being there.
All right. And are there any tricks that you found FCs use either when flying the doctrine or flying against it that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I guess the drone assign, as like from our point of view, is really powerful. You have a couple of ships, like have all the rattlesnakes assigned to drones to a couple of guys, and they just pick the primaries and kill them. And they won't see the yellow boxes. You don't see the warning. You just see the damage, and especially if you have doctrines and people that preheat their harness, it's pretty hilarious. Especially on shield, they have preheated harness, so they have zero resist, and they only turn them on when they get yellow boxed. But then you don't get yellow box because we use drone assign, and then you just blap through their like half their shield with the first volley, and then by the time they get harness on and shield wraps like the locked up by Logi, they tend to be dead. So that's pretty powerful. And as a weakness is obviously bombers. Like we have like various fits, and some are more vulnerable to bombers than others, but they have such high signature. Like a Rattlesnake, I think, is one of the highest sig subcaps in the game. So bombs will hit really hard, and especially if you combine it with a wave of void bombs, you have to set it up a bit so you can't get hit with one wave, basically, like in one go. But still, it's just luckily there's not that many good bomber FLCs anymore in the game, but it is definitely annoying.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, thank you for your time. I hope to see you on the field again soon. Do you have any shoutouts that you'd like to give?
Everyone in my alliance, like I'm not going to name any specific names because I will 100% forget people. So everyone in the alliance and in coalition as well that like step up during fleets. That's what they make all possible. So.
All right. Thank you for your time and fly smart.